Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Here.
Mr. Franco.
I'm here.
Mr. Cabrera.
I am here. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, the notice requirements have been satisfied as to the time, place, and date of holding said meeting by posting notice on the bulletin board here in Borough Hall and by mailing and emailing same to the Herald of Cape May County and the press on December 7th, 2022. In the event of an emergency, your emergency exit is the door that you came in, our front left, your back right, or our front right, your front left. Excuse me one second. If anybody's on the conference line, could you mute your phones, please, so it's causing feedback in the meeting?
You're on a delay.
I'm hearing myself twice.
Yeah, you're on a delay.
There you
Probably
go.
on the
Thank you.
Facebook feed, too.
Quick reminder, this meeting is being shown here live today on the borough's Facebook and YouTube channel. If you're going to watch the live stream and you have a question, you're more than welcome to use the dial-in conference line. That number is 888-363-4734. And when prompted, you're going to enter the access code 9699020, followed by the pound or the hashtag. Excuse me one second.
Yeah.
It's that one.
Anybody on the conference line, could you kindly mute your phone, please? We're hearing feedback. Thank you. If you watch the recorded version of this meeting and you have questions, you're more than welcome to email our clerk at clerk@wildcrest.org or phone her at 609-729-8040. Madam Clerk, may we have the ordinances, please?
Yes, sir. The first is ordinance 1409 regarding marriages.
Motion that ordinance number 1409 be placed on second reading and final passage by title only.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 1409 be placed on second and final reading by title only.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Ordinance 1409 reads as follows. An ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 32A, Fees, Section 32A-2, Marriage and Civil Union Ceremonies, eliminating the officiant fee for marriages and civil unions.
Motion that a public hearing now be held on ordinance number 1409.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that a public hearing on ordinance number 1409 now be held.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes. Floor is open for comments on ordinance number 1409. Anybody on the conference line have any comments on ordinance number 1409? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion that a public hearing on ordinance number 1409 now be closed.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the public hearing on ordinance number 1409 now be closed.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Motion that ordinance number 1409 be passed on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 1409 be passed on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance 1410, which is amending Borough Hall hours.
Motion that ordinance number 1410 be placed on second reading and final passage by title only.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 1410 be placed on second and final reading by title only.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Ordinance 1410 reads as follows. An ordinance of the Borough of Wildwood Crest amending and supplementing Article 3 of Chapter 46 of the Code of the Borough of Wildwood Crest, entitled Work Schedules for Full-Time Administrative Employees within Borough Hall.
Motion that a public hearing now be held on ordinance number 1410.
Second that?
It has been moved and seconded that a public hearing on ordinance number 1410 will now be held.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes. Floor is open. Public comments on ordinance number 1410. Hearing none. Anybody on the conference line have any public comments on ordinance number 1410? Hearing none.
Motion that a public hearing on ordinance number 1410 now be closed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the public hearing on ordinance number 1410 now be closed.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Motion that ordinance 1410 be passed on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second that.
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 1410 be passed on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next, we have the resolutions, and the first five are all relative. If we could do by consent agenda. The first is authorizing a contract award for community development consultant. The second is identifying small cities fair housing officer. The third is approving public facilities grant management plan. The fourth is authorizing grant application submission. And the fifth is adopting a state model participation plan for DCA Small Cities Program.
I'll motion that by consensus.
I will second.
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolutions be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
The next is authorizing the appointment of Michael Neal as fire official.
I'll move that.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
I'll abstain.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
And Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing the appointment of Michael Neal as temporary housing code official.
A motion?
You motion it, Joe?
Yes.
Motion, Mr. Franco. Can I get a second?
Second?
Mr. Cabrera. It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
I'll abstain.
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Yes. And Mr. Cabrera?
Yes.
Okay. Next is exercising the option to extend one-year extension of contract for Ocean Outfitters O2 Inc. for beach concession at approved locations for Ocean Surf Camp and Water Safety Instruction Program.
Motion?
I will second.
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is exercising the option to extend one-year extension of contract for WC Ice Cream, Inc. for beach concession at approved locations for sale of ice cream and ice cream products.
Motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is exercising the option to extend one-year extension of contract for Sumbrella, Inc., doing business as Billy's Beach Service for beach concession locations for beach umbrellas, beach chairs, flotation devices, and sale of bottled water.
Motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is exercising option to extend one-year extension of contract for Big Time Vending for supply, installation, servicing, and maintenance of vending machines, the 2021-2023 contract.
Motion?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing the appointment of Linda Marchicello as an advisory member of the Wildwood Crest Green Team and filling a vacated position with a term expiring December 31st, 2024.
Motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is designating commission meeting dates and times in 2024.
Motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is designating official holidays for year 2024.
Motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing refund of property taxes errant payment in the amount of $1,541.33 made payable to Tracy Doherty.
Motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing award of emergency contract to Xylem Water Solutions USA for a new pump motor on Topeka Avenue in accordance with NJSA 40A:11-6.
Motion?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is amending, supplementing, and restating the 2023 Borough of Wildwood Crest's Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual.
Motion?
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing increase of contract in the amount of $15,000 to Star General Contracting Corporation for portable toilet contract.
Motion?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing approval of change order number 1, Joseph Von Savage Memorial Pool and Roof Improvements, to reflect additional concrete demolition and reinforcement at various locations at the not-to-exceed sum of $49,879.47.
Motion?
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is designating trick-or-treat hours on October 31st, 2023, from 5 to 7 p.m.
Motion?
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing advertisement of a notice to bidders for fiscal year 2023 NJDOT reconstruction of Orchid Road.
Motion?
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
And resolutions 22 through 30, we can do by consent. They are authorizing release of escrow funds for permit number SO 22-0605 in the amount of $710. SO 22-0704 in the amount of $322.50. The next is SO 22-0705 in the amount of $120. The next is SO 22-0801 in the amount of $502.50. The next is SO 22-0805 in the amount of $772.50. The next is SO 22-0811 in the amount of $772.50. The next is SO 22-0813 in the amount of $232.50. The next is SO 22-0814 in the amount of $390. And lastly, ZB-21-05-01 in the amount of $448.25.
I'll motion by consent.
I'll second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolutions be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Lastly is authorizing the appointment of Joanna Lasavita to fill a vacancy as a member of the Wildwood Crest Tourism Development Commission, commencing immediately and expiring December 31st, 2024.
Motion?
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Motion that all bills properly authorized as submitted be paid.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that all bills properly authorized as submitted be paid. Roll call. Mr. Schiff.
Yes.
Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Thanks, Trish.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Trish. You want a glass of water?
Seriously.
Okay, next up is correspondence. There's none listed. We're going to go with our first round of public comments. We'll start with anybody here in the audience. I just need your name for the record, and please come on up to the podium.
Good morning, my name's Steve Tarnowski. I live at 5401 Lake Road. I've been here a number of times for about a year now, and just asking about the flooding that's going on in the back of Lake Road at Lake in Cressy and Lake in Morning Glory. And there were two issues initially identified. And the first issue was the sewers and the backup of the sewers at the bay, and I'll call that nuisance kind of flooding, although it does flood. But I know that the town has authorized kind of the reconstruction of those sewer outfalls and authorized the money, and I've come here and expressed my appreciation for that aspect of the flooding problem back on Lake Road. The second aspect I raised a year ago was the overtopping of a particular bulkhead at 5401 Lake Road. And I first came to the code officer's office, and I was told a year ago that there's no code and we can't do anything about it. Then I came to this meeting, I identified it, and Commissioner Franco recognized that that was an issue and recognized that it's an ongoing issue, and kind of identified that there was an ordinance and the ordinance didn't pass, and the bulkhead ordinance is proposed to be, I mean, it's on today's agenda, but it was proposed about a year ago and it didn't pass, and be patient because we're gonna have another ordinance and take a while to do it. I then looked at the ordinances currently in Wildwood Crest, and the ordinance currently in Wildwood Crest, and I'll read it. Ordinance 17-5J, that all bayfront bulkheads shall be minimum elevation of 8 feet, but in no case lower than the adjacent street end. So I investigated this bulkhead at 5401 Lake Road, and it's about 14 inches lower than the adjacent street end. There's no grandfathering of this bulkhead. There's no other ordinance that identifies this bulkhead as being exempt from this ordinance and compliance with this ordinance. In the last week during this storm, 5 out of 7 days, this bulkhead has been overtopped, and it is flooded Lake Road, a block down in Wildwood, a block in the Wildwood Crest, a block down to the Acme. And the people in that neighborhood are basically sequestered to their houses for 6-7 hours every time that thing overtops. And I'm here asking today, I know a letter has been sent to this resident in June of this past year. I know there's been no response, and I want to understand what the next steps are to resolve this issue. This is menacing the neighborhood, let alone the property damage that's going on, let alone the inconvenience and being locked in your house. And life goes on. From my perspective, nothing's going on, and this person just refuses to comply with an ordinance. And I know there's other aspects of ordinance compliance that can happen. And I just want to understand what's the next step.
Okay, so with respect to, I'll start with the easy one, which is the tide flex valves or the valves
Yeah.
going through the bulkhead. So you are correct. The borough has some funding already in place to address some of the more problematic areas.
I see you guys out there surveying. It's
Yeah,
working. You guys are on top of it.
So
Yes.
I was actually there yesterday to review the private property that you're raising here today. And clearly, what you're saying is accurate, 100%. The individual, as I understand it, was served 2 letters from the municipality and also was here in person yesterday and was advised verbally and will be followed up with by phone, by another letter to address it. The response that we received was that it is being addressed, that he needs contractors. We're going to help them get names of individuals that can perform the necessary work. Hopefully that works. In the meantime, kind of working parallel with that, as you noted, under new business, we have the bulkhead ordinance. That is a major discussion item for the borough to discuss because it's not just that property, but affects all property, including the borough's public property as well as the private property. Right. So we're going to get into that discussion a little later, but that's where that stands as of right now. So the only thing I could ask for is just a little bit of patience so we can get that letter out, see if our help with providing some contractors, the individual probably to be politically correct needs some assistance in order to get this done. And I don't think we have any problem in trying to help without involving lawyers and so forth. So just bear with us as we work through it. But the bigger picture for us is going to be this ordinance that we're going to talk about here very shortly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Public comments?
I have a question, I don't know.
Come up.
My name is Michelle Schaefer. I'm not a resident, but I am a vendor. And I had a question regarding your beach ice cream sale bid. So you guys currently apparently have addendum years to it that has never been done before. And you're currently at below what you were bidding, what the minimum bid was prior. And I was told when I called the office that the addendum can be declined by the vendor or declined by the borough. Is that correct?
Ron,
No, but what just happened today was that commissioners elected to extend the contract 1 year as provided for in the agreement already.
So that was already addressed this morning.
It was, correct.
Okay, I'm curious why, in terms of the city, like, for example, Sea Isle is getting over 700,000 for 2 years. North Wildwood gets more than you, Wildwood gets more than you. So rather than extend the bid, why not put the bid out, since there's other bidders that could bring your beach triple what you're currently getting per year?
Well, those are policy decisions made by the commissioners. So
So let me make sure I understand the question. So the initial term is up. However, in the current agreement, there is an option for the current bidders to seek permission from the borough to extend it for an additional year. Is that the question?
Correct, that's never been in your contract prior to this current one.
Right, okay. So I think as Solicitor Galzunas indicated, so that's a policy decision made by the governing body. I know from me personally, listen, money's one thing, but having relationships with our current vendors is good. It actually, they understand what we need, what we do, and I think when we look at prioritizing what we need to do to run this municipality, it's probably sitting lower on the poll. And when the actual extended terms get expired, then that is the time that I think that we'll probably be going back out to bid for the full term.
So they also have an extension year next year as well, correct?
I'm
That is
not sure.
correct.
I
two
think it's
total
next-
5 years.
Yeah,
correct.
so there were 3 initially, and then 1 year
1
renewals.
year, right. for
Up
2
to a
years.
maximum of 5.
So they can extend it 5 more years?
No,
No, up to a
One
maximum
more
of 5
year
years
after
total.
this year.
So 3 years plus 1 plus 1.
Okay, so your position is you'd rather go with the vendor that you have a relationship with rather than triple what your current bid is?
I don't know if triple would be but
Oh, it absolutely would be.
for
What you-
ice cream and that kind of thing, yeah, maybe. But I would say to you that in the overall picture, if you look at our relationship and the things that we have to do as a municipality, I don't think it's unreasonable for somebody to, as a courtesy, be extended an additional year or even 2, and then the time to address all of it would be at the end of the 5 years. So
Okay. That was
that's my
question.
personal decision. I can't speak for my fellow governing body members, but you're asking me and I'll give you the answer. That's how I feel.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, anybody else in the audience? Anybody on the conference line have any public comments? First round, there's another opportunity later. Okay, we're going to move under new business. So the first one is, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, is the bulkhead ordinance. So I don't know if anybody's had the time to read through. It's rather lengthy and has some ramifications that the governing body would need to consider. So if you don't mind, I'll start off. Solicitor Galzunas circulated these through the clerk's office, and I think you have copies in your packet. But I just have some general questions just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So our current ordinance, are we currently sitting at, Mr. de Blasio, to the best of your recollection, at 6 feet NAVD? Is that a current ordinance requirement?
You're at 8 in the 23 datum, but when you convert that to the 88 datum, which is a standard, that's about 1.3 feet less. So to answer your question, bulkheads on the bay side are supposed to be installed to elevation 6.7 in the 88 datum, and the proposed ordinance that you're contemplating takes it to 8. So it's a 1.3 foot increase.
Gotcha. NAVD.
NAVD 88.
88? 1988 or 88?
NAVD 88, 1988.
1988.
1988,
Yep.
okay.
Excuse me, Don, could you put your
Oop,
microphone back
sorry,
on? Thank
sorry
you.
about that. So that's our current, right? So currently, we're at the 6.7.
Yes.
Okay, and the recommendation is to go to the 8.
8, yep,
Okay. And that's for public and private, right?
correct.
Okay. So under the draft ordinance that we're reviewing, there's a section that talks about the beach. I guess my question is, so put the bay off to the side for a second. On the ocean front, can you just walk us through that then as well?
So on
Similar?
the ocean front, the current ordinance requires elevation 13.
So that's actually would be higher than the bayside,
Correct.
but that's the area we have the least amount of issues on the beach side.
Correct.
So this ordinance, is it necessary to have oceanfront bulkheads included in this, or do we have the ability to not remove that? Because personally, I think the oceanfront is fine.
Well, you still have to have a standard for oceanfront bulkhead, so whether you increase it or not is your decision, but I don't think we're recommending that, but we're recommending that you have a standard,
So what's our current, what do we have there now?
13.
So what's there now is current?
Correct.
Okay, I misunderstood. All right, that's fine. All right, so then that just basically confirms what we're already doing. Puts in, just basically codifies what we're already
Well,
doing.
The new ordinance would also require improvements of the bulkhead if there's a substantial renovation to the property. So if the bulkhead is below 13, it would have to be raised to 13 if there's a substantial improvement to the property. That currently does not exist in the existing ordinance.
So that would, well, not to get off track, but that would kick over onto the other ordinance?
That would make it clear in the new ordinance that a substantial improvement to a property would require bringing the bulkhead up to code on both the oceanfront and bayside. Currently, only a substantial, well, not currently, there's no substantial improvement requirement in the existing ordinance. So the new ordinance would require bringing the bayside bulkhead up to 8 feet if there's a substantial improvement on the property, meaning you tear a house down, that's the time to put the bulkhead. You're raising a house up, that's the time to redo the bulkhead. Any substantial improvement in the property, that's the good time to raise the bulkhead. That too would apply in the new ordinance to the oceanfront as well, so that the bulkheads can be brought up to 13. I don't know that there's any below 13, but in the event there is, if there's a substantial improvement, it would be brought up to 13.
That's in applicability, section 17-2, on the first page.
Okay, so right now, so that's already there. So I guess my question is, the new development that we have along the oceanfront, we're talking properties directly on the oceanfront, right?
Properties with a bulkhead.
With a bulkhead.
Which would be correct.
So is there, okay, so then I guess
From,
if they do 50% of improvements to the value of their property, they would have to come up to, if they're below the 13, they need to get to the 13.
correct.
Gotcha. But our standard is already the 13. So that's really not an issue. It's not really not a
Shouldn't be.
non-issue.
The elevational standard is there. The requirement to make it compliant under substantial improvement is not, and that's what's in the proposed.
Understood.
Correct.
So safe to say, we're okay on the beach side, I think, so with that.
Yeah, your flooding issues and the thing that drove this ordinance is on your bayside, because your town generally grades that way.
Okay. So now let's just go over the requirements, because now, so as the borough contemplates doing bulkheads, and those bulkheads that are there now, some of them are at the 6.7, some of them are lower than the 6.7, right? The borough's bulkheads, but even the private property ones are
Yes.
under, there's some higher, but I think for the majority of them are well under the 6.7. Now, the one that we spoke to previously is well under the 6.7, which is
Yes.
causing the issues. So how would we go about codifying? Because right now, we're already at 6.7, so really, I guess, does that particular owner also would have to be at the 6.7 minimally?
Under the current ordinance, no.
Under the current ordinance,
So
no.
if you have a bulkhead that is below 6.7 today, there's no mechanism to compel a property owner to raise it. Only if they replace their bulkhead and they come in for a new permit.
But the borough doesn't have, they're not in compliance, we're not in compliance either.
On some of the bulkheads, that's correct, yep.
So we're asking residents to raise theirs without us doing ours.
In this ordinance, no. That was a conversation piece.
If we did pass it.
No,
Yeah, it's not in
the
there.
requirement for a timeline to require persons to bring their bulkheads up, let's say by 2025 or 2040 or 2050,
It's not in here.
is removed from the current draft. of
It's
the
only for
ordinance.
substantial improvements to the property.
Only a substantial improvement to the property would trigger the requirement to raise the bulkhead to the 8 feet.
So the controversial piece of the ordinance that we discussed last year was removed. There's no time that compels somebody to do that unless they demolition their house and they're building a new home, or they trigger a substantial improvement.
Okay, so, so I have a house on the bayfront. I'm gonna do, my house is valued at $1 million. I'm gonna do a $500,000 of improvements. My bulkhead is currently at 5.0, and I would need to at least get it to the I would need to get it to the 8.0 if I were to do those improvements.
Right, so we would collaborate with Rick, because that would trigger, certain construction code things where that house has to be brought up to certain standards. And then at that point, we would work with Rick to get evidence of what that bulkhead elevation is. If it's below 8, then at that point, the property owner would engage a professional engineer to evaluate their bulkhead. Their bulkhead may not necessarily need to be replaced, soup to nuts. It may need to be modified or elevated, and in a manner that a professional engineer would design, and they would submit that to the borough, and we would review that.
Got it. Understood. All right, so now, so if the borough is considering bulkheads of the public, at this public street ends, is the recommendation then at the that would also be for the 8 that's for the 8.0?
Correct, so the
NAVD.
project that we're currently designing, what we call the bayside bulkhead replacement, which is whacked up into 2 phases, those bulkheads are scheduled to be designed to elevation 8 at the top.
Okay, so the issues that we're having are not to the flooding issues, which is, they're not related to the bulkheads. Is that a fair statement?
On a,
I'll just add a little bit more to that. So the issue is really the water coming back from the bay, because the water's going to seek its own level, coming back from the bay into the pipe and out the stormwater outlet. So when you get the heavy rains and then the high tide, the water's coming back and flooding the streets.
so in a progression sequence, your first line of breach is the water comes out of the street in an inlet, and then after you address that or solve that, the next point would be it would come either over a bulkhead that's low, or it would come through a bulkhead, because bulkheads are not watertight. So to answer your question is, the bulkheads are part of it, but they're the secondary issue to flooding.
Okay, so as the borough considers manual valves going through the bulkhead. So in other words, what we have there is those rubberneck ones, right? They're supposed to open and close with the tide, and seems to me that they're not working. So if we replace them with the recommended one, so when it's high tide, Public Works would manually close them to stop the water from the bay from coming back, but the rainwater would still will continue on. It would potentially have some level of flooding, but not as much.
You're
because-
eliminating a portion of the flooding.
Right.
Not all of it, but a big portion of it.
So then when the tide recedes, then we would open those valves back up, and then the water would pass
Right, that's
through.
if you don't put pump stations in, you would do that, correct.
Okay. All right, so then I guess the question is, so if we, the bulkheads, there are basically from Cardinal to Cressy are the brand-new concrete. South of Cardinal, I think, starting at Sweetbriar, headed to Lotus. They're all, so the bulkheads are the height that they've always been, but the wood around that on the street side and the street condition itself, there are some really bad ones, some not as bad as others. But I guess the question is could we or should we take those current bulkheads and just make them look nicer and address the flooding issues with the tide flex valves? Or is this the time where if we're gonna touch the bulkheads, raise them up to 8 feet? Because if we raise them to 8 feet, that's gonna kick into all these issues that we have when you sent your inspector out and listed all those things that are gonna involve cost to the owner's gonna have major costs to their own property, but some of them have made improvements in the boroughs, in the public right-of-way, that they're also gonna have to do, because the boroughs wouldn't have to pay for that.
So you're gonna have some issues relative to replacing the bulkhead regardless if you elevate it or not, and then you have secondary issues once the bulkhead goes up, and we're trying to raise the street ends, you're gonna trip some other issues as well.
Right, some of that's gonna involve legal work.
So, for example, if there is a step or a structure in the right-of-way that would prevent us or be in the way of us replacing the bulkhead, regardless of what height we put it in, it still has to be removed or dealt with. You get into the secondary issues of trying to raise the street ends, which is the right approach, and then you have brick pavers or slates or driveways that need to be contended with, going on the private property to transition the elevation of the new street and tying it back in. So there's issues associated with the roadway raising aspect of it as well.
So follow me on this thought. So if the borough just took those bulkheads, we changed the tide flex valves, we dress up the wood, make them look aesthetically nicer, we gave it a new paving job and any piping work, is that considered a major improvement where we would fall under our own 50% rule, or is that just something we would do because it's just recommended by FEMA and DEP?
Well, eventually you're gonna have to raise it to 8, correct? So why
So
raise
if
it to 6 if you're gonna eventually have to raise it to 8?
So if you put in a more reliable valve, that's gonna make an improvement. Then the next question becomes, what's your next step and how do you make your street ends compliant to your code?
Right, I have no problem going to the 8 feet. I just want to make sure we all understand the ramifications to the borough and to the private property owners.
I think
So-
eventually you'll have to go to 8 feet.
But when is that requirement, the 8 feet? Is that a 2050 requirement, or is that a requirement?
It's a 2050 projection on sea level rise of where, the town should be. And when we do an analysis of where all your neighboring towns up and down Atlantic and Cape May County, they're at about 8 or higher. So that's based on sea level projection.
Okay.
I can't see making private owners go to 8 and we not go to 8. Doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't, I agree. We're gonna do it, make it 8.
Okay, so at 8 feet, I don't disagree with that. I just want to make sure that we're walking our way through this, so we're all on the same page. So 8 feet is the recommended, but it's only if the property owner does substantial improvement. So the borough would do its own to the 8, but that doesn't trigger private property owners from doing it, right? So if they don't do improvements, then
No
they don't
requirement.
have to raise it.
Right, so if you have a current bulkhead that's at elevation 4 or lower, and you're a nuisance to the neighborhood, this ordinance doesn't compel them to fix it on a time frame, which was originally discussed. The only triggers would be substantial improvement.
Okay.
Or if they have to make repairs, right? Repairs, construction, reconstruction of the bulkhead would trigger it.
I don't know if
It says in 17.6, Ron, it says all bulkheads constructed, reconstructed, renovated, or repaired within the borough shall conform to the following minimum. And that's where you get into like what it's made out of, the hot dipped galvanized, the system itself, the sheet piles, and then the bulkhead height is the next section, which is 17.7. After that, so does that trigger it?
Yeah, like if you
The
had a
definition?
broken whaler,
Yeah.
and you had to replace a tie rod, I don't know if that would trigger it or not, so that should
Well,
be
that's in
clarified.
17.6, but in 17.7 is a completely separate paragraph, the height. So does one trigger the other, is my question. I think we need to like dive into that.
Yeah, I don't know if that was originally contemplated to
Right.
trip that, but that's a good point to consider.
Someone's gonna go ahead and repair their bulkhead or do construction on their bulkhead, why not make them go up to the 8? That's another trigger you could implement.
The private property owners?
Yeah.
Right.
That would be another trigger if you wanted to make it that. So if someone had to do repairs, say their bulkhead is compromised and leaking, or there's an issue. If they're gonna go ahead and do repairs, why not make them go to the 8, like you're saying, make us go to the 8. If you're gonna go to 8, go to 8.
Well, that's what was discussed last year in that April meeting.
But that's not how this is,
Right, but that's
worded.
what it was discussed.
yeah. I just would kind of look at that language to make sure you word it correctly, that's all.
Okay, so just a couple takeaways here. So it sounds like generally, we are okay as far as the ordinance is concerned, is that going to the recommended 8 point at the public street ends.
And
There's
if I
no,
could, Mayor, just to put this all in perspective, if you ever have a chance, one of the bulkheads that we're working on is down by the borough's public dock. So if you were to see that handrail that's up there right now, that would be the top of the bulkhead. So there will be an impact on the street ends as you look. You know, if we go to 8, we're gonna try to compensate raising some of those street ends to get them up higher, but you're gonna see more of a vertical wall, especially since the borough's decided to go with the previous type of design, which is the concrete cap. You're gonna see that wall down the street, and whereas before you were able to see through to the water line. So just be
Right.
aware of
It's
that.
gonna
So you're
Sight
eliminating a
lines.
view, but you're also reducing flooding.
Correct. This is-
Producing what?
Reducing flooding.
You would just have to walk over to the new bulkhead and look over now, as opposed to as if you were at the street end looking through.
Right, okay. All right, so I got, understood, so the plan, as we would initiate this ordinance, but as also as we plan for a construction project, then I think, as we said in the field walkthrough, notice to these property owners, at least on all of the affected street ends, they have to know what they're looking at right now, right? They have to plan financially, because if we start this project, anything that they have in the public right-of-way that they did on their own, they're responsible for that particular cost. And there might be, in some cases, easements that may be requested.
We're
by the
gonna need,
borough.
right, so just generally speaking, as the commissioners contemplate this, if you go and look at each site, just say plus or minus, you see a bulkhead now, picture that bulkhead being 2 to 3 feet higher than what it is today. And we're gonna be able to raise those street ends to try to get them up, but we're not gonna be able to compensate for the 2 to 3 feet. Maybe we can get it up 1 to 2 feet. So you will experience a higher vertical element. And then in a case-by-case basis, there are gonna be things that need to be removed, and we're gonna need to get right of entries to go onto private property to transition the grades back if we can raise a street. So we're gonna recommend that the borough highly consider raising the roadways in tandem with the new bulkheads. And we're gonna need assistance from the private property owners to work with them as partners, but also to get, right of entry and access onto properties.
Okay, so I think, so as we finalize those bid specs, but I guess kind of parallel with that is notice to these property owners and all the issues that we're looking at.
Oh, 100%.
And
Yep.
it's gonna have to be a lot of dialogue with all the owners.
Will that be spelled out in that letter? What they can expect?
Well, we'll have to work with Ron on that. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if we customize it or we just, some properties are gonna require right of entries and others are not. Some properties have brick pavers that start at their garage and come all the way out to the sidewalk in the borough right of ways, others don't. So it's probably gonna be on a case-by-case basis.
We're only doing 5, so it's probably best to do them on an individual.
Right, well, the one at Sweetbriar in this first phase is, that's a pretty involved job.
I mean,
We
what-
have the dock there, and there's commercial on the south side with trash areas. Yeah, it's,
Yeah, what would be great if we could do it, would be to notice the property owners and actually meet them there and be very transparent and actually stand there and say, that step has to be removed, it's in the right of way, or that step is gonna be buried. We need to remove the brick pavers and just do it very transparently and very detailed so they understand what's gonna happen.
yeah, a lot of that stuff was from way back, I mean, that's been there for years. So,
Yep.
anyway, so, okay, gentlemen, are we okay with, those little tweaks and moving forward and?
I am, yes.
Tweaks are good. I have one concern about raising the roadway to the property owners. Maybe I don't understand it the way I should, or maybe it has to be explained a little bit better. But if we raise that roadway going to the bulkhead, will that create an issue of, when it does rain, flooding one of the properties? Because they're gonna be at a little bit lower elevation. So
No.
the drainage
No,
is
there
what I'm
would-
asking about.
so
Would that
it would-
impact them?
Yeah, so it would be designed in a manner to not bury the adjacent property owner, so where we would evaluate, so a lot of the properties, you have your sidewalk and then the properties slope up. So what we would do is we would find a point and taper that down so the properties would still be higher. So we wouldn't bury them, so that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, that was the only thing I was thinking about with that. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the other one, which is the floodplain management regulations and the adoption of, I guess, or need to appoint or designate floodplain administrator. So on this particular one, this is just to confirm a couple things, right? So this is the state model. That was kind of, this draft is basically a state model, but kind of customized to Wildwood Crest, is that right?
Yes, there's certain things that you're allowed to customize, but that's pretty much, that's, anything of substance or material is dictated by the model ordinance.
So as I read through it, so it looks like FEMA is driving this bus as well as the NJDEP,
Correct.
right? Correct? Okay. So, and in this, so this is roughly 35 pages. And these 35 pages put a lot of restrictions or a lot of tracking on this municipality. So as I read through it, and I'm looking at all the details, right? This floodplain management administrator is basically, is almost like, it would almost be a full-time job and require additional staff to track all this stuff. And because there's a 3-year look back on this too. This is insane. So I guess my question is as we dive into these details, are we prepared to look at all that stuff? And I guess there's there's engineering here involved as well as this, and even on the bulkhead one. So somehow we got to consider all those fees and that additional cost into permits, and at the end of the day, the end user is going to be the person, the property owners. They're going to have to pay more because of what FEMA and the DEP are now forcing down our throats. So I get the purpose of it, but I think it might be, some of it might be a bit overkill when we just got done talking about how we're going to address our flooding issues internally with bulkheads and infrastructure work and so forth. But this creates a whole nother level to the private property owners.
But your failure to pass it means you could lose your NFIP rating and your participation in that. So the state is giving you, there's a carrot and a stick. This is the stick. And we've been warned via letter that we're in that position. So it is something you need to contemplate at some point in time. It is also a requirement of our plan endorsement, and in our plan endorsement, in our list of things that we have to do in the course of the next 10 years, this is one of them, and it says that we must do it within a certain time frame. And that's true with any town that is plan endorsed and has centers designation. It's true in any town who wants to continue their participation in the National Flood Insurance Program.
And the magic percentage is 50%, correct? That's the one where they're saying, you're doing, your house is worth $1
Substantial
million,
improvement.
if you're doing $500,000
Yes.
worth of work. But it's not just $500,000 that you're planning to do, it's everything back to the
It's
last 3 years.
cumulative,
So
correct.
if you put a new roof on your house, that goes
That's
against
correct.
and when you get to the 50% mark, then what's that mean? You gotta raise your house.
It's cumulative. These are not our rules, these are the state's, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection.
What's our time frame, did you say? You mentioned time a couple of times
3 years
to implement?
to have this in place, I think. I mean, we haven't gotten our pick yet, our list of implementations that we have to do. This is one of them.
So, Connie,
Should be
if we
3
re-
years.
if
Could be
we
2 years, but I
removed
think it's gonna be
ourselves
3.
from this, the rates would obviously go up.
Our taxpayers who have flood insurance would no longer receive a discount.
Got it.
Only those who participate in have flood insurance. So this is NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, and Rick will tell you that our failure to do this could lead, and we've been warned via letter in writing, that we would no longer be able to participate in that program, which means no one who has flood insurance would receive the 20% discount that they currently
But they're
receive.
still gonna go up if we implement.
Oh, flood insurance is still going up regardless, because there was, several years ago, they implemented a new structure for the increases in flood insurance. So yes, they would still continue to go up, but they're mitigated by the current discount that they receive. That's correct.
It seems fair.
I never said it was fair. It's horrible, but It's a reality in which we live.
All right, so when did the clock start ticking? For having to initiate this?
Well, that's, how long have they been?
They've been threatening this for several years,
Yes.
right?
For
So this
several.
is not the first time they've threatened us and said, we need you to do this. They've been asking fairly nicely, and they've been reminding us, but now they're sending us letters that are more threatening and saying, you will lose it if you fail to pass
Okay.
the model ordinance. Yeah, I can send you all a copy of that letter again.
Okay, so I guess the takeaway here, gentlemen, is to dive into the details on this. If you have any questions, I think probably speak with Rick and Ron and Connie, and we go from there, but. I guess
And any ordinance that we are contemplating, our solicitor has given us very good advice that it should be sent to the DEP prior to introduction for their review, and then wait for their responses before we actually introduce it, because other towns have passed model ordinances or attempted to through introduction, and they've been thrown back, and they've said, no, you're not going to accept that. That ordinance, the changes you made are not in compliance with the current regulations.
In the county?
In our county, yes.
Can you give me a list of them? Do you have that?
I do not have a list, but I
Oh,
know
you
of
don't
a
have a
town
list.
that I can
Oh,
give you.
okay,
Yes,
sure.
I have a specific example, but I don't know of every town that's happened in. I don't know that I could get that list, but I do know of a town, and I can give you that example that theirs has been denied.
I'd like to see that.
Yes.
Yeah, I know when this first came out, I know there was major opposition, to do that.
There has been, yes.
And I guess there's been no results from that opposition statewide, right? So they're still looking. So again, so I'm trying to get a better feel for, I understand they're asking, I understand they're sending letters, but what is the drop dead time frame as to when this needs to be finalized? Because I'd like to maybe back into it based on how long it takes to introduce an ordinance.
I don't think we're going to get a clear answer on that one.
I'll give you the letter. The letter kind of gives you that indication that it's already passed.
All right, so in the meantime, can we?
You've all had, I'll give you a copy of the
Can we
letter.
list this under old
Bill
business?
came to you,
And then
sure.
we'll file back up. As far as the bulkhead ordinance, if we are ready for introduction on that, I think that, that's got a little bit of cleanup to do, and then we can have it ready maybe by November, or if that's next meeting in October. But I would say at least by November for sure. That way it'll be in effect by the end of this year. In time for next year.
Works for me.
Even if we introduce November 1st, you're fine.
Yes, okay.
I'd say that November.
November 1st?
On that bulkhead ordinance, not to get off track, so I know that there's an application part of that. Mark, I read the borough engineer throughout this draft a lot.
Yeah.
My question, I guess that you guys, we need to consider, I want to make sure that your fees, that your time is covered in that permit.
Yeah, I mean, what we could do, I think we did
Any
this,
expense that we incur as a role of the engineer having to be so heavily involved in this, that's going to get passed on to the.
yeah, what we could do, and I think we might have did this originally when we started talking about this a couple of years ago, is we can make an application or format an application form that conforms to the ordinance that we can provide to construction, and they'll have that application form, and they can hand that out to people as they need them.
Okay. That's it for new business. We're moving on to old business. Swim Run Fest, no information on that. Capital planning for generators, I believe we had submitted that to the grant writer, is that right?
We submitted a proposal based on the site evaluation that we did with Concord Engineering, and the borough's desire to have that whole building have a generator size for the whole building should power go out.
Right.
So you have that proposal now.
Oh, we do, that's right, we do. But do we have an idea if there's any grant money available?
That has, I don't know.
So what comes first, your proposal, and then we dive into the grants? Is that what we need to do?
Dive into the grants now. I've looked and I haven't found any yet, but I've been looking.
Okay, so how about we just do just a little bit more homework on that, and then we can go from
Yeah.
there. All right. Traffic calming. So, Mr. Blasio, I think you've had in front of us some traffic calming measures that the borough could consider. I think there were some boards around here. Do you mind just walking the governing body through these real quick?
Yeah, so before I spread the boards out, I'll just kind of paraphrase from the letter. We provided an analysis in a report, a letter format on August 30th of this year, and we were tasked with reviewing the existing conditions along Atlantic Avenue, Ocean Avenue, Park Boulevard to determine if bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements could be implemented on these roadways. Based on the feedback we heard from the public and conversations with the borough officials, we understand kind of what the problem is. We didn't have to evaluate first what the problem was, so we jumped right into what we could do at that point, which is putting together traffic calming techniques, which helps promote pedestrian and bicycle safety on the roadways. We utilize the NJDOT designed roadway manual for complete streets and conceiving how we could do these items. The items range from simple to more complex. They range for, hey, it's appropriate for you, or not appropriate for you. So we basically threw everything at you in the report. We didn't want to assume that you wouldn't like a technique, and those techniques are broken down into volume control, vertical control, horizontal control, and some other things called other types of devices like bump outs and things of that nature. So we threw this all at you in a very detailed report, and then we provided some conceptual drawings to show you what those improvements would look like. So you have basically a dinner menu of things you can do. Some of them you could do in tandem with each other, and some are either or. And I know it was a lot of information that was thrown at you. And then basically at the end of the report, we kind of got to it and made recommendations for you to consider for each of the 3 roadways. And again, you need to decide what you think is appropriate and realistic for your community. So I'll spread these plans out so everybody can see them. Some of the easier things that you can do immediately that are not permanent and earth shattering or striping. When I went to look at Park Boulevard, the road was very wide, and essentially when a driver feels like he has a very wide roadway, he feels comfortable to drive faster. If a vehicular driver feels like he's constrained, if there's elements that are near him, either side, they tend to slow down. So you could consider things such as striping. We also talked about speed humps, whether that's appropriate for you or not. That's again an option for you. We talked about things that are more permanent, that have larger cost ramifications and drainage ramifications, such as the bump outs on the corners. Again, that's another throttling technique. Obviously, that's has dollars associated with that and drainage implications. We have enhanced signage, and it looks like I believe it was Ocean Avenue had, because of the width of that roadway, had less things that we could do. And when you look at Park Boulevard and Atlantic Avenue, everything that we proposed, you have the full palette available to you. The last thing I would say to you is we had explained in our report that this was basically done without a benefit of a traffic study, a traffic signal warrant, and the determination of any effects of the roadway's level of service. And then my final comment is, we're in a tourist community. I mean, you have a lot of people that come here, and there's a certain point where there's only so much you can do. So that's the summary.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
So kind of parallel with that, so Connie, you're working with the county. You sent something out yesterday. I just didn't have a chance to review it yet, but what?
Yeah,
can
that
you give-
letter was directed to you and the governing body to attend a workshop meeting, which is forthcoming in November. That meeting date has not been established, but will be once you get back to Dan. He is with the traffic consultants. There's 2 traffic consultants working with the county right now. So what's happening is there's a steering committee that's been formed, a committee of people that were appointed by the county that are working on traffic local roadway traffic safety program. And during those meetings, I've been in 4 so far, we've discussed what we want to focus on in terms of pedestrian deaths caused by traffic accidents or crashes that cause deaths in cars. So the 2 things that we're determined that the county will focus on and this study will focus on is pedestrian deaths on roadways, and also, which is important, especially on the island communities, because we have such an influx of people, and there are more cars, there are more people. We've already had, one really unfortunate incident, and we're thinking that should be a priority. The other one is right angle crashes that are caused by people, making a turn. So those 2 things have been designated. As we move through this process, they want to get the input of stakeholders, you being a stakeholder. So they're asking that you participate in this next meeting, which will be in November, and I hope that you'll get back to them stating that you do have interest. The gentleman's email is in that letter that I sent to all of you. The next stakeholder meeting after that, we'll schedule another meeting with just the steering committee, which, like I said, we've had 4 meetings already. We've done our analyses with them on what we're currently doing. Like, we're already doing speed signs, flashing speed signs. What are your towns doing that we don't want to replicate and add to this program that we're now going to implement? And there's a 5-year plan for this. So this is not going to happen overnight. This is going to take the better part of 5 years to institute. At the end of this program and this study, what will come out of it is we will then, the county and all of the municipalities within Cape May County, all 16 municipalities, will then be able to partake in grant funding and federal monies. So without having this study and without doing this, we would not then qualify. There's a new regulation that requires us to do this. So it's all being done through the South Jersey Transportation Authority. They are taking the lead on this. They got the grant money to pay for these consultants that are currently working with us to do this local traffic safety plan. So the plan is in place. We hope to have that done early next year. I think it could even be sooner. But there is a timeline that I can share with you. We're working as quickly as we can, but these workshop meetings are an integral part of creating that plan. And the plan is going to focus on, like I said, pedestrian safety and traffic calming measures that lead to that, as well as right angle crashes.
Gotcha.
I think I responded that I was going to go.
Yes,
That's the end.
yes, but you need to respond to the gentleman
Okay.
because he wants to hear from you as a commissioner, you as an elected official. So he will then, once you say, yes, I can, and when I can meet with you, when I can attend, he's going to take that information and then try to plan the meeting accordingly with, at your convenience.
Yeah, preferably
So-
after general election day.
Yeah.
He said
He said
November, right?
early part of November, but he didn't give a specific date because he does want to see what the bulk of people are able to do. And he knows that November is a short month and there's the League of Municipalities. They're actually going to do a presentation at the Cape May County League of Municipalities in the very near future because they're trying to do as much outreach as they can. And that was one of the things we discussed in our steering committee is how are we going to get this information to the municipalities and to the elected officials, and how are we going to get this out to them and explain it to them. One of those ways we suggested was the Cape May County League of Municipalities dinner, which they are scheduled to attend, and I believe that's the November meeting as well.
Okay, wraps up traffic calming. Moving on to code enforcement, that was a 2024 item now. Back beach excavation is on hold pending the Army Corps dune. Dredging is, anything on that?
Nothing since Connie's last report now.
New Jersey Avenue infrastructure pre-county, so as I mentioned, the county has delayed the New Jersey Avenue project. So the borough's infrastructure project will probably be in 2025. Public Works roof, we're just waiting on the final specs to go out to bid to the co-op, right? So that's Public Works roof, the Crest Pier roof, and possibly the Scoop Taylor roof if it's possible. That's a low priority at the moment. Main 2 are the Crest Pier and the Public Works roof. Bayside outfalls, we just talked about all that. Arts Pavilion, so we are waiting, we're in the 45-day hold period with Cape May County Board of Commissioners and the Open Space to award us the $1,043,000. All right, in the meantime, the bid specifications are being worked on, we said, within the next week or two. All right. Washington and Seaview Beach Isles Falls in capacity.
The deadline for that application is
Deadline.
November.
November.
Jim Rotella is working on it with Mark.
Gotcha. Update landscaping and lighting in the business district. Can we strike that, Madam Clerk? We have some planners on order from Wausau,
Can do.
and then everything else is on hold until the project starts in maybe 2025, 2026. Lightning detection system, anything on that? Nope. Okay. Okay, that's all the old business items. We're going to start with public comments. We'll start with anybody here in the room. Hearing none? Anyone in the conference line have any public comments? Okay, we usually have commissioner comments on here, so it's not on here, but I'll ask the question. Any comments from the commissioners?
Not for me today, Mayor. I'm fine. Thank you.
I do have one. I'd like to introduce Mr. William Cripps. He's in the back here. He's going to be our new EMS coordinator. I know he reached out to you gentlemen to talk to him if you have any questions for him, but I'd like to introduce you to the family here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioner. Like I said, it's humbling because this is where I actually got my start. So I started back in Crest Rescue as a volunteer back in the day in the mid-90s, and to me it's full circle. So it's exciting. I'm retired from the city of Wildwood after 25 years, and I'm back here. So
Mid-90s? You were down at the rescue? I was just out of high school.
Yeah, right.
I thought so.
Jokester.
But thank you. I can't
Billy, get used to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I look old. I get it.
That's all good.
Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
Anything I have is the Borough Yard Sale is this Saturday, so
Rain or shine.
rain or shine, so be careful as you're moving around the crest.
It always does.
All right, that's that. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
Motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
10:36.